Welcome back. Remaining with South Africa's State of the Nation address, the Communications Department there has embarked on a switch off of the last analogue transmitter in Limpopo. The process is to allow for the continued implementation of the move to digital television. This is in line with government's plan to expedite the country's 15-year-long delayed broadcast digital migration program. With Limpopo, the Communications Ministry has switched off analogue transmission in a total of 5 provinces to date. Other provinces to go digital include the Free State, the Northern Cape, West and Mpumalanga provinces. During his address to the nation on Thursday, President Cyril Ramaphosa also announced that government will make additional spectrum frequency available for mobile telecommunications.
Greatest constraints on the technological development of our economy has been the unacceptable, which has taken years, unacceptable delay in the migration of broadcasting from analog to digital. The switch off of analog transmission has been completed in a number of provinces already. As I announced in the State of the Nation address last year, the other provinces will move to digital signal by the end of March 2022. And I have seen the joy that our people have when they gain access to digital and have the pleasure to watch television, which is clear, which has many more stations, and this we are going to continue doing. Now, as part of this process, government will continue to subsidize low-income households so that they can access a set-top box and make the switch to digital TV. Our communications regulator, ICASA, will commence with the process of auctioning the high-frequency communication spectrum in about 3 weeks from now. Now, this will unlock new spectrum for mobile telecommunications for the first time ever in over a decade. In addition, we will facilitate the rapid deployment of broadband infrastructure across all municipalities by establishing a standard model for the granting of municipal permissions. These reforms will revolutionize the country's technological development, making faster broadband accessible to more people, but more importantly, reducing the cost of digital communications.
Right, to speak a little bit more about this, Jan Vermeulen is the editor-at-large of My Broadband South Africa. It's the largest technology news website here. A very good evening to you, Mr. Vermeulen, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So 3.5 million South Africans are still to migrate, and that deadline passed in 2015. How many more still need to have rather being migrated? Because I mentioned the provinces, but I think we still don't have a sense of the figures. If we're going to say this is a victory, and the president here is saying something in the region of by next month we should be done and dusted.
Yes, so we've got 4 provinces migrated already and a 5th on the way. We are a little bit behind schedule of the new communications, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni's schedule, but she's made tremendous progress taking over from former Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams on this program. Now, what's not touched on in the president's speech, because this matter is quite complicated. Firstly, this isn't just about digital TV. The migration from analog to digital TV unlocks a whole bunch of frequency spectrum that is connected to the auction that he's spoken about. And until the migration is completed, that auction is actually in danger. and the matter is quite complicated. Telkom is in court about the matter, wanting to delay it, and so it's actually extremely important that this migration complete. And yes, the deadline you mentioned, the international deadline was 2015, but initially South Africa was on track to have completed its migration in 2011, and as a result of numerous issues and delays and political interference at the time, that didn't happen. And then subsequently the whole fight over encryption versus no encryption between DSTV and the SABC, and now ETV is threatening to drag out the process. So that's now the other matter that the president didn't have time to delve into. But also he's sending a message here to everybody that's involved in litigation, saying, you know what, this thing has to happen, regardless of who's in court with whom. This has to happen by the end of March. And right now, the SABC's transmitters are the only ones being switched off. The SABC, its ETV is still in negotiations with the minister. They've got a court case pending that's due to be heard in mid-March because they want the process to be stretched out over 12 months. And because they say that they're going to lose viewers and therefore that will hurt their bottom line. So right now, the only one coming to the party here is the SABC, and ETV not so much. And I think the minister hopes to settle the matter by demonstrating to ETV that the migration will be successful, and then ETV will have no choice but to fall in line.
So the goal that was being looked at internationally was around radio frequency spectrum, as you said, to allow for mobile broadband services. You mentioned the auction and the legal action that's been taken with words like unlawful, irregular being bandied about to speak about the process. But I want us to whittle it down to layman's terms. As you said, it's a complicated issue. We've been told basically what this is to give the state an opportunity to better service the population. So if you're talking about ICT, yet we don't have the infrastructure, and it's not as if every household can even afford some of these. I know set-top boxes are going to be free, but then there's the interconnectivity of everything else. Talk us through that and why this spectrum auction is important and how it will facilitate some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can the radio frequency spectrum, you can think of that as raw network capacity. So the way people are watching this broadcast right now, that is over radio frequency spectrum. If you listen to the radio in the mornings to work, that's over radio frequency spectrum, and your cell phone communicating with a tower is radio frequency spectrum. It's all the same thing, just operating at different frequencies. So I think people are quite familiar with tuning a radio that runs between 80 megahertz and 108 megahertz. And so now what happens with TV and with cellular networking is it's exactly the same principle as tuning a radio station, except much higher frequency. And whether you're watching DSTV or whether you are communicating with a cell phone, it's the same principle. Your cell phone effectively connects to the tower over a channel. Now, the reason the analog to digital migration is so important is that the frequencies that TV occupies is much lower than what the cellular network providers have available to them today. And lower frequencies allow you to lay down much bigger cells. You put up your regular tower, a regular mast, and you hang your antennas from that mast. But for the same tower, you get much bigger coverage areas on the kind of spectrum that TV uses today than on the frequencies that's available to cellular networks today. And so once they call this the frequencies that TV is sitting on the digital dividend. Now, when that digital dividend releases, when the analog TV signals are switched off, that frees up the digital dividend. And what that means is networks can build much bigger coverage areas. They can provide better coverage. They can offer a better network experience, so faster speeds, and they can cut prices because they don't have to spend as much money on rolling out capacity on their networks. Because right now, the networks have to roll out, in urban areas, they have to roll out many more towers to build out capacity, which increases their costs. And so this is like a win-win-win. When the analog migration happens together with the other frequencies that are up for auction, is that networks will be able to provide coverage in rural areas more easily. They'll be able to build capacity in urban areas more cheaply, which will allow them to cut prices. So literally, it's the best of every world. It's lower prices, it's better coverage, and it's faster speeds. That's what they've promised. Okay. And hopefully by, when the spectrum gets released, we can hold them to that promise and see just much better access to broadband services for everybody in the country.
So perhaps let's go to the other part of my question, which is very important, that all of this, as you say, will eventually, allow money back into the fiscus. The question then obviously becomes, what is government intending to do with it?
Yes, and that's not really been discussed, but there are many programs on the table that need money, whether it's ESCOM, whether it's the social relief grant, whether it's the NHI. There's plenty of places, plenty of gaps in the national fiscus that need plugging. We have loans that need to be repaid, and so this money. So we're talking, just to put things in perspective, for the auction, we're looking at about 18 billion rand, and that money goes straight onto the national budget. It's not earmarked specifically for broadband projects, and that'll go towards plugging whatever holes in the budget that need to be plugged.
All right, Jan, thank you so much for speaking to us and helping us grasp it, because as you said, it's all very technical. The jargon does throw one off a bit, but it's important for all of us to understand what is going on here, and who is at fault may be debatable, but more importantly, what do we as citizens get out of it when government completes this plan and those new timelines being given by the President. I'm sure we will speak to you when the time comes, but thank you so much for edifying us further. Jan Vermeulen is the editor-at-large of My Broadband, South Africa's largest technology news website. Okay, moving on abroad. Australia